Thanks to Taylor Fail for making this ridiculously awesome little flyer. I mean, imagine the pressure on me. It looks like I'm a rock concert or like a poetry reading. I mean, this is amazing. I mean, now I understand why professors assign their own books in class. Like, anyway, all right. So anyway, further, my topic tonight is grace and nature. Grace and nature. And for my talk, I'm going to give those terms a very wide meaning. By grace, I mean religious stuff. So the kind of stuff you would hear in theology class, but also the kind of stuff you would experience in your parish church. And by nature, I have a similarly wide meaning. I don't just mean what you hear about in philosophy class, I mean what normally happens, the way things normally work. All right? And what I'm going to talk about, again, is how those two go together. It's not grace or nature, it's grace and nature. They go together. Now, not everyone believes that. Now, I don't know how to say this guy's name right, but he's on TV. It's Bill Maher. Bill Maher, is that right? You guys? He's on like HBO. Bill Maher, is that how you say it? Okay. He has this movie, Religulous. I've only seen the little few excerpts of it you get on TV, but I think the name kind of sums it up, right? He is a nature-only kind of guy. We don't need religion. Religion is the pie in the sky when you die. It is the opiate of the masses. It's what you tell dumb people to get them to do what you want, right? So that's one side, right? But then we have the other side too. We have religion-only people as well. These are the people who get really annoyed with guys like me, philosophy guys, right? Like, to know what to do in life, I don't need to read all 10 books of Plato's Republic. I need to read the 10 Commandments, right? It's faster. And for this side, we actually have an early church writer who said this. His name was Tertullian. Notice it's not Saint Tertullian, just Tertullian. He said, what has Athens to do with Jerusalem? Athens being philosophy, Jerusalem being Jesus. Okay? Now, the Catholic thing, though, is to get both of those together, grace and nature. Any of you in Father Malign's class? Anyone? Do we have any Father Malines here? Oh, that's okay. Anyway, he reminded me of this, but our team captain, St. Thomas Aquinas, said, grace builds on and perfects nature. All right, so we get them together. Now, so far, I think that's all nice. That's the kind of thing I would tell you, or your Ms. Smith, your theology teacher would tell you. You write it down in your notebook, you memorize it for the test, and then you forget it, right? So I want to do things a little differently in the hopes that this will be seared into your memory as weird, right? And you'll remember this and ponder it. So here's what I propose to do. All right, if it's true that grace builds on and perfects nature, what people normally do is they tell you about a natural thing like marriage. There's always been marriage, even before the church. And then they say, but look, the church doesn't abolish marriage, it just improves it. Now we have a sacrament of marriage. So they go from nature into grace. But if grace really builds on nature, then it should be possible to go the opposite direction. To start with something you learn in theology class, or something that happens at church, in your parish, and kind of work your way back to nature. All right? That's what I'm going to do tonight. I'm going to pick 3 things in Catholicism I think are very, very weird. Like, they bother me. They're strange. And then I'm going to try to tell you, but they're really not strange, because there is a natural basis for them. Okay? So first, miracles. Who thinks miracles are totally normal? Well, that's too big. Okay, good. That's fine. Yeah, I mean, you're right, but you have to wait and see why you're right. Miracles are weird. It's like when you go to your grandma's house, and she starts telling you all about the blood of St. Januarius, that on one special day of the year, it's in this little vial in some church in Italy, and it's solid, but then it turns liquid. And then it goes back to being solid. And it's stuff like that. Or like these movies where someone gets the stigmata, right, out of nowhere, and then all kinds of stuff happens. So they can be kind of weird. But I have to admit this, as weird as they are, miracles are really part of the Catholic thing. They are central to the church. And you may want to say, well, all religions have their miracle stories, right? Buddhism does. Islam even does. But all their miracle stories tend to happen very early in their religion. And we have those too. We have Jesus walking on water. We have the multiplication of the loaves. What's different about Catholicism miracle weirdness is we have it all through history right up to the present day. To be canonized at church, even now, you have to have 2 documented miracles where someone has laid a picture of you or something on someone who's sick and asked like, oh, Saint Bella, please cure me, or whatever. And then when it happens, and the doctors have to say there really is no explanation, that's how you become a saint in the Catholic Church. So we take this miracles thing very, very seriously. All right? Even as weird as it is, even as embarrassing as it can be. But I want to try to convince all of you, except for the 2 who are already with me, that this is totally normal. This is totally good. That miracles are actually a natural thing. Or at least, let me put it this way. They occur in nature. Now, I learned this the hard way. I was telling my class here today, we only learn wisdom through suffering, right? I first learned this, I didn't tell you that? Man, I don't give you my good stuff. Anyway, we only learn wisdom through suffering. So my suffering was, when I was about your age, I had this big, famous professor at Indiana University, Henry H.H. Remack. And yes, 2 H's, okay? And when he sent you a note, he would write H to the 3rd power Remack. I swear to you, I'm not making that up. So this guy's a huge deal. And in a personal meeting with him, he confessed to me, he's a German Jew, okay? He confesses to me how much he loves the Catholic Church and the art and the saints, and St. Francis is so amazing. Well, I mean, I'm a young, fired-up Catholic, so I go for the kill. I'm like, well, why don't you just become Catholic then, right? And I start saying, consider all these miracles that St. Francis worked, and I start going down that path, and he starts to wave off. He's interrupting me, like I do to my students now in the middle of what they're saying. No, stop. I'm going to say something. Now, what I expected him to say was that only you guys, these are your little in-house miracles. No one else in the world believes them. That is not what he said. He said to me, miracles are not an argument for your religion. Miracles happen all the time. Consider Abraham Lincoln. And this is where I got the brilliant example I use in class in Lincoln. I got it from him. He says, that guy's a miracle. He should have been a backwoods hillbilly. He grew up in a shack, chopping wood, and yet he becomes a great American orator and frees the slaves. I mean, he was a great moral authority, a great speaker. All right? A miracle. Or for something, of course, at the time, I had never heard anything like that before, so I just kind of tucked my tail between my legs and slunk out of his office, right? But as I've reflected on it, I've seen how right he was. Now, you've all read the Aristotle's Ethics, right? Maybe you wish you had it. There were some pained looks. Remember Book 7, The Divine Man, those character types. I know some teachers, not to be named, like Peter Pauly, might not do Book 7 of the Ethics. But for those of you guys who did, he talks about this character called the Divine Man. And all he really says about him is he's inhumanly good. He's off the scale. He's like a god. He's divine. But he gives an example. Hector, right? Hector, the ancient Trojan warrior. And if you know your history or your Iliad, you know what he's talking about, because Hector was a prince of the second most powerful city in the Mediterranean. He should have been like a god, like an NFL athlete, like a spoiled rock star. Instead, he's a family man, breaker of horses, right? He's a miracle. That should not have been the case. Or, if you were one of my good students who read your primer over the summer, there was a little piece by a guy named David Foster Wallace about Roger Federer as a sort of angelic creature. They gave it the dramatic title, Somehow Both Flesh and Light. But aside from all the rhetorical flourish, the point is right. There are certain athletes, Federer, Jordan, Gretzky, Pele. These guys break the normal rules. When you watch them, they even look weird. Like Jordan really seems to float in the air for too long when he dunks. Go watch it on YouTube. Or Pele just weaves around the field, does stuff with his feet in the ball, and you think, no, that can't happen like that. But he does it, right? These are sort of natural miracles, small m, right? And these are all human examples. But if I was a science guy, I could even get into weird stuff about two-headed snakes being born, and raining dead birds somewhere in Arkansas, or wave-particle duality, or all that weird stuff when you get to the atomic level. The point is, there are natural miracles. So if miracles can occur for no religious reason whatsoever, just so someone gets an awesome paycheck in sports, or so Aristotle has something to write about, then is it so much of a stretch to think they could occur for religious reasons as well? That's my point. You see where I'm going with that? So reality is open to the possibility of miracles, and then by grace, then we can have religious miracles as well. So they're not as weird as you think. Everyone, we okay on that? Any immediate condemnations, or can I go on? All right, we'll save it to the end then. All right, so as my talk goes along, in my judgment, my examples get weirder. Now, you think it can't get weirder than two-headed snakes, but I have something. All right, here it is. Next point. Donut Sunday at your parish. Yeah. No, I know. All right. Now, because you didn't all react like that, I can tell a lot of you have not been to a Donut Sunday. Who has been to a Donut Sunday at your parish? Why didn't you all laugh when I said that? Was it totally normal for all of you guys? I mean, here's my point, all right? You go to it, all right, think about it like you've never experienced it before. You go to Mass, hopefully you're dressed kind of nice, out of the ordinary. They light candles, these people parade in these fancy outfits. You worship the King of Kings, the creator of the universe in this formal, ritual way. You receive the Eucharist, which is supposed to be and is the body and blood of Jesus. And then what happens? Then you go to the parish hall, and you have a glazed donut. And you drink bad coffee out of a styrofoam cup. Do you see that these don't fit together? And it gets even weirder. I mean, those of you who've been there, you know it doesn't end with a bad coffee. You finish your cup of bad coffee, you go up to get another cup. Then what happens? Then the 4 old guys corner you, if you're a guy. And they're like, are you a knight? And you're, hopefully you can say yeah, like first degree and get out of trouble or something. But if you say no, they're all over you. They're on you like white on rice. They're like, oh, you got son, you got to do this as a man, right? And then they try to tell you about it, but they can't really tell you about it because it's a secret. All they can really say is there's like insurance and a weekly poker game. I mean, maybe it's better if you're a girl, but I don't know. Like those ladies from the Rosary Sodality, they look mean too. So I don't know. So anyway, I think Donut Sunday is weird. Or to expand it to a more doctrinal level. Just that in the church, you're not allowed to pray on your own on Sunday. Like, you have to go to church or you commit a grave sin. And they formalize us and say, we are the mystical body of Christ, right? We are all somehow united on this deep level. All right, so that's weird. All right, or it should strike you as weird. But again, I want to convince you, it's not. It's not weird. I have an argument. And as always, my argument starts with Aristotle. Sorry, I know there's some haters out there. All right. Aristotle's Politics, okay? Right on the first page, he's going to explain political societies to you by telling you how they come about. He's going to show you how they grow out of nothing. So, how do you think he's going to start? You think he's going to say, okay, well, you turn 18, and then you go to the library, and they register you to vote, and then you go vote. So you think he's going to start with individual people. He does not start that way. I actually have the quote. Here's what he starts with. He says, let's see, where is it? Oh my God. Oh, where'd it go? Oh, all right, got it. In the first place, there must be a union of those who cannot exist without each other, namely of male and female. So what does he start with? Not isolated individuals, but married people, or at least couples. Let's put it that way. So right from the beginning in Aristotle, there are really no individuals. There are people in groups right from the start. All of you come from other people, right? You're born out of another person in this way. So from the very beginning, Aristotle wants to say, you are communal. You are social. That's what you are at the most fundamental level as a human being. You're not meant to be alone. There's another quote from the Bible. It is not good for man to be alone. For you theologians out there. So Aristotle, or again, to go to the ethics. I hope even in Petra Pauli's class, you covered the books on friendship. Tell me you did. Do you all read about friendship? Yeah. Just nod your head. You don't have to. Yeah. All right. So, what does he say about friendship? Is it a bonus? Is it just something, hey, it's nice if you have it, but who cares if you don't? What did he say? What's the word? Necessary, right? And this is Aristotle. He's not exactly thrilling. He's not exactly prone to emote. So if Aristotle says friendship is necessary, he means it, right? Again, being social, being communal is not incidental to what you are naturally as a human being before we even talk about the church. Or for those of you sad individuals who are Aristotle haters, don't raise your hand. I don't want to know. I don't want to think of you that way. But if in your heart you're one of these sick people and you don't like Aristotle, then remember back to that passage in your primer. I'm sorry, Arden, I'm sorry. That passage in your primer from the late Pope John Paul II. All right? Now, even though he was the Pope, in that passage that we asked you to read, and I know you read because you're great people, you'll recall that he was actually writing more philosophy than theology. He talks about Christ a little bit at the very end of that passage, but for most of it, he's just talking about what you normally experience. And what he talks about specifically in that passage is what does it mean to be young? What is this thing we call youth? And the one thing he points out right away, the thing that is absolutely characteristic of young people, of youth, is that they want to hang out with other people. He says they have an awareness that they must live for and with others. Again, he's not quoting the Bible here. He's just saying, that's how it is, take it or leave it. And I think you should take it. Think back to when you were young and your parents told you for whatever reason you couldn't go to that sleepover you wanted to go to. You were crushed, right? Or in high school, think of how much time you wasted just hanging out with your friends, doing nothing. Like when you went home and your parents like, what did you do? You were pretty honest when you say, nothing really. And then they're like, okay, Jimmy's doing drugs. And but you were being honest. It was more about just hanging out with those other people than what you did. All right, so we have both Aristotle and Pope John Paul II saying, fundamentally, it's fundamental to you to be social, to hang out with other people, right? Even in the Marine Corps marathon that I just ran, which you would think is the most god-awful solitary activity on earth. You're alone for 26.2 miles, and let me tell you, I felt very alone. But I did notice other people having fun. Who were the people in the marathon having fun? Did anyone here run the marathon? Okay, good. Did you? Did you have fun?
Yeah.
Were you part of a team or group?
Yeah, I was part of our RTC group.
Thank you. Thank you. This is a setup. I paid him off beforehand. What I wanted to say is that the only people in the marathon who had fun were the people who were part of some group. Because then they had buddies in the race, and they had spouses and friends on the sidelines with these hilarious signs, and people running alongside them for part of the marathon. I mean, like, I was so jealous of those people, because it was just me and my pain for 26.2 miles. And that's not somewhere you want to be as a human being. But again, that's nature, right? I'm not quoting the Bible here. Naturally, we are social. So when the church asks you to go to Mass, and then after Mass to go to Donut Sunday, embrace it, right? It's actually not weird. It's just building on what you already are by nature. The church is just trying to take you to the next level in some way, okay? So that's my second example. Grace builds on nature. And again, we go miracles, weird. Donut Sunday, weirder. Now for my final point of weirdness. I promised my students I'd be brief tonight. I'm trying to carry through that promise. I also want to leave time for the other classes to completely refute me. So if I seem to be going fast, that's why. So what could be weirder than miracles and Donut Sunday? How about heaven, the Catholic idea of heaven? Who knows what we do in heaven according to the Catholic Church? Who can tell me? It's your chance for class participation. I'll give you points. Who's got it? What do we do? Back there.
How do they even know? Because they haven't been there.
That's a good question, but I hope Jesus had a clue. I mean, that's a good question, but right, is we're not based on human reason. We have this, we are able to cheat because Jesus comes down and he's apparently true God and true man, and forms a group of disciples, and then gives the church the Holy Spirit to try to teach us. But we'll keep it speculative then. What does the church think or speculate that we will do in heaven? Who knows? Yes.
Well, it defines heaven as being in complete communion with God, but you get to look upon the face of God.
Look upon the face of God. And the way you said it was so intellectual and good, complete communion. Let me dumb it down. I'm going to dumb down what you just said. You sit on a cloud and stare at God. And God is invisible while you stare at him on your cloud. I mean, you see why sometimes it's hard to sell people on this, right? All right, I think that's weird. Like when I think of heaven, I can think of a bunch of stuff I'd rather be doing. There should be beer, Xbox. Sorry, my wife just looked at me with scorn. But anyway, that's our soccer at least. More of an obvious good time. But no, we're communing with the Lord in this contemplative gaze. All right. Yeah, wow, is the right reaction. Again, though, I want to try to sell you on the idea that it's not as weird as you think. And there is a way in which if you approach it right, it becomes non-weird. All right? So, as always, we start with Aristotle, Saint Aristotle, our favorite. Remember that Saturday before the semester began, we inflicted upon you these discussions of the final passage of the primer, which was the culmination of your summer reading of the primer, as you know. You felt it was that. And we talked about a passage from Aristotle's work, De Anima, on the soul, right? And there was that great passage, the soul is in a sense all things, right? That you are unlimited, you are dialed into all of reality, potentially, right? I mean, but isn't that a little bit overkill? Here's what I mean. Think of what you're going to do on Thanksgiving break. It's coming up. You need to plan for it. I'm going to predict, and you can see if my prediction comes true. Number one, you're going to eat a lot. You're going to eat like a pig. And everyone will around you, so it's fine. And then number two, you're going to sleep. You're going to sleep before you eat. You're going to sleep after you eat. You're going to sleep late every morning. Even if you wake up, you're going to force yourself to pretend to be sleeping because you'll say, I hate getting up for my 9 a.m. philosophy class, so I'm not getting up till noon on this break. And then finally, so what do we have? Sleep, eat, and watch TV. Even TV you don't like. You're going to watch football games for teams you are not interested in. But you're just going to do it because that's what you do on Thanksgiving break. Okay? So, does your soul need to be all things to eat, sleep, and watch TV? My retriever can do that. He watches TV, seriously, yeah. So I want to suggest to you, that's weird. I'm not saying Aristotle's wrong. God forbid. I would never say that, ever. I promise my students. But it's weird. It's weird what he's found out about us, all right? Or, again, in Aristotle's Ethics, the only thing better than one Aristotle reference I found is 2 in a row from 2 different books. Try this out in your own life. Anyway, in his Ethics then, he talks about how we enjoy things the most when they are new for us, like a new song, or a new girlfriend, or a new movie, something like that. And then he says why. Why is because when something is new, your mind is most active in regard to it. You don't know what it is. You're trying to figure it out. And because you're so active, you experience all this pleasure. But then you kind of get used to the thing. You know what it is. You get bored, right? And then it's not so much fun anymore. So then you want to jump on to other things. Now, that's kind of sad. I mean, right? That if I was an existentialist philosopher, I would make a big deal about this. I would like vomit, and then I would say to you, like, we are doomed to be bored by reality, and we need to be resolute as we stare into the abyss of our boredom and nausea and non-being and our desire to be God. I mean, they say stuff like this. But you can also look at it positively, too. Think about in your... Again, I know I'm in love with the primer, but I am. I'll admit it. I want to marry it, except I'm already married to a beautiful woman. But anyway, go ahead. there's that passage in the primer, this time sadly not from Aristotle, but from a novel called Gilead by Marilyn Robinson, I believe is the author's name. And in that passage, the narrator and her father have been at the grandfather's grave, and they've been cleaning it up all day, which is sort of dirty, depressing work. I mean, it's not what you want to do on your Thanksgiving break, right? Like, let's go to the graveyard. But immediately at the end of this experience, there's sort of this sudden surprise attack of wild, ridiculous beauty. Like there's this, the sun comes up on one side and the moon comes up on the other. Between them are these beautiful colors, you know, kind of like on my flyer, you know, like this kind of thing going on. And, you know, they're shaken by it. They're shaken, both the narrator and her father. And as she reflects on this, the fake narrator says, I was struck by how much we have the ability to experience stuff beyond what we would ever need. Like all they needed to be able to do was pick the dead grass off the grave and wipe the dust off and kind of look serious for a while and say a prayer and go. But humans are the kind of thing that's so big, so capacious, that even at a graveyard you can experience beauty. Right? So that's a more positive way of looking at this. But again, the basic point is that we're sort of too big for our lives in some way. Like some of you, in my class we skip St. Augustine, but I know some of you are reading the Confessions, right? Just kind of nod sadly if you are, yeah. Oh yeah. And he has that quote, right? Our hearts are restless until they rest in thee. And you read it and you want to puke. You're like, oh my God. I mean, thanks. But you're misreading it. It's not emotional fluff. That is a doctrinal statement. Our hearts are restless. That is your natural situation. You are too big for this life, right? And again, you could flip out and say then, oh, you're doomed and it's terrible. Or maybe there's a simpler solution. Maybe you're not meant only to contemplate things in this world. Maybe you're meant to contemplate some kind of infinite object that would be ever new, ever able to activate your mind and make you feel pleasure forever, right? Could that be possible? That's a possible answer. It's like college, right? Bear with me, all right? I hope that by and large you guys enjoy college. I do. But it's also okay to be miserable sometimes. Very miserable. Why? Because this is not your final destination, right? You did not come to college in order to stay here forever. You're not majoring in being at college. That's why, like that movie Van Wilder, while I don't think you should see it, it's morally offensive, it's at least right about that, right? That it's weird when someone approaches it that way. Because college is a thing you're supposed to go to, learn a whole bunch, and then leave behind, right? This is why your grad student professors like me are so fundamentally disturbing. We didn't get that. We never left. It's wrong. We should have left, okay? So you're right to kind of react to us that way, but you should just pity us mostly, all right? But that's, okay, so this college thing, this analogy I'm trying to make, I'm saying all of life is like that as far as your mind is concerned, right? That you should feel a little restless here. You should feel even a little bit bored, right? Because you've been made for something bigger. That would be the natural basis for something like this beatific vision, this contemplation of God that goes on forever and ever on a cloud and makes you happy, right? So in these three cases, what I've tried to do is say grace builds on nature, right? And to try to cement that in your mind, I've tried to be a little bit insulting and a little bit weird and give you weird examples, but then try to show you that, oh, this is a hint for us over here, what grace is. We can go back and see there's, if not at least a natural basis, that there's a natural possibility for this stuff. So why have I inflicted this on you? I guess it's my way of saying that we didn't just have you take philosophy and theology your freshman year to sort of double your pain, or to just provide jobs for us poor grad students so we can stay there forever. The idea is that you need both, right? It's not enough to just have theology. It's not enough to even have philosophy, even though I'll never admit this again after tonight to my students. But here, when I'm going to be truthful, you have to have both, right? Nature and grace together give you the fullest view of reality possible. So it's a good thing. All right, that's kind of my spiel. I've left some time now. Do you guys have questions? What do you want to ask me about this? Because I've been promised by Mr. Stolte and Mr. Pietropoli that they have prepped you to kind of critique me, to denounce me, something like that. And I've left time. I'd say we have a good 15 minutes left. So how can I help you write an amazing extra credit paper right now? What do you have to ask me about this? I will field any questions. Bella.
I don't really understand what you mean when you quoted, you were too big for this world.
I mean, here's what I mean. It's kind of sad the way, don't you think, wouldn't it be somehow better if you're the kind of person that you could just get a good thing and just be satisfied with it forever? You know what I mean? Like, you know, I mean, what are you into? Xbox, music, movies? Music, all right? Wouldn't it be nice if one day we had a raffle in my class and I gave you some awesome CD and you were good with that for the rest of your life? Like that's what you listen to in the car. Anytime you need consolation, you went to that. People would try to make you buy other stuff. You'd be like, nope, I got my band. I got my, Hank Williams Jr. CD that Mr. Schimpf gave me. And I'm good for the rest of my life. I mean, that would be nice, right? But the fundamental fact is it's not you, it's all of us. None of us can handle that. We get bored with this stuff. And I'm suggesting it's like our minds are too big for these things. And that's weird. Because do you see like dogs and cats sitting around in existential dissatisfaction like, oh, need a vacation? No, they are not like that. But we are. And that's disturbing, right? Unless maybe there's something that can satisfy that thirst we have for something always being new, always being exciting. So, yes, I'm suggesting that heaven is like if that Hank Williams Jr. CD had like an infinite number of great tracks on it about guns and trains and mama and being drunk and all that stuff. So you just contemplate it forever. I mean, that's kind of what heaven's like, except...
I thought we stared at God.
I did that. Yeah, I mean, that's my dumbed down version, but I mean, you contemplate God, right? You stare with your mind. And that's good, because your mind is very, very ready to do some staring. Alana.
But I get what you're saying with how nature and grace together give you the fullest view of reality possible, right?
Right.
But doesn't knowledge come into play? Because you can't just be ignorant and spill out things about nature and grace. If you have to understand.
Is that what I did?
No. I'm not saying that at all. I'm not. I'm just saying, like in general, like a little child is not going to understand. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like a little child's not going to understand certain fundamental things. As you get older, I guess you can grasp it better.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
I do. Yeah, we would expect to grow in knowledge through life, but how's that a problem for nature and grace?
Because don't you have to understand like the fundamental of nature and grace in order to understand reality? You know what I'm saying? Okay, I'm done.
No, I like what you're saying. I don't want to suggest that as long as you have philosophy and theology class, all your questions are going to be answered, and we'll give you the meaning of life and you can write it down in that. So there's always going to be some mystery left, right? But I mean, I think that is kind of what I was trying to argue, that if we just had reason alone, we'd know a heck of a lot, right? But there would be this sort of leftover dissatisfaction in some way. And that, I guess what I'm trying to say too is sometimes people make a choice. So like, I'm a theology guy, I'm a philosophy guy, I'm a theology girl, philosophy girl. But really, the interaction of the two is where the real power comes in. Because sometimes nature suggests something, like in our class, I gave you that Aristotle quote that the morally best thing is to be nice to your friends, right? And then you think theology is saying something differently. So by the interaction in between the two, you really come to understand something more deeply. Right? So it can go, or you could start with something in theology, like St. Augustine kind of starts with God as a Trinity. And then he goes from grace back to nature, and he starts seeing triads everywhere. He's like the number 3 crazy. He's its biggest fan. So he sees in the human being we have, memory, will, and thought. And then even in love, he sees that there's a lover, a beloved, and then the love itself. So I do think having both is best in some way. I think that's the perfection. I mean, if you can't do it, if you're like a little kid and all you can have is Sunday school, I'm sure God understands. Or if, like, you're raised somewhere where you never even hear about the Bible and all you have is reason, I'm sure God understands. But I still think it's better to have both.
I agree.
Thank you a lot. I'm sorry, I don't know your name.
Oh, that's all right. So when we're talking about like the beatific vision and how it's normal because it's something new forever, like that's why it's satisfying. I'm sort of wondering, like, are we not do we not enjoy new things because it's going towards a completion? Like, what's the point in trying to understand something that we'll never completely understand, that we'll always be getting to know better, but we'll never actually know it fully, you know?
Okay, so you're saying that, are you saying that I've kind of given a little bit of an over-negative reading of like becoming familiar with things? Is that part of what you?
Or it's sort of like that just the newness fulfills us, but I was wondering maybe like aren't we more persuaded to actually fulfill, like fully know something, and that's what persuades us?
Yeah, no, that's a good point, because if it was all newness all the time, how would it even be the same God, right? Like, well, today you're really good, and now you're really just, and then now you're really big. But no, it has to be that you who were really just are also really loving, or something like that. So how that fits with what I said, I think when we approach a normal object like this water bottle, right? At first it's like, ooh, it's new and purple and weird, right? But then, so when we first come to it, we have like all the categories possible in our mind operating, trying to figure out what it is. Is it decoration? Is it a Christmas ornament? Is it a weapon? Is it a water bottle? And then you finally kind of understand, okay, it's a water bottle. But then the problem with this object is once you've done that, it doesn't just keep offering new and exciting things to find out, right? Like, okay, it's a water bottle. It's a purple water bottle. It says Schimpf on it, which is my last name. Camelback. You know, we're kind of, it's getting hard to find something new. Where with God, you would approach it with all those approach Him with all those categories, find out stuff like you suggested, and then, but then there'd be even more new angles of those things you found out about Him. Like that, first you find out that, wow, you're just, but your justice doesn't conflict with love. In fact, the two of them complement one another. So what you know will be constantly deepened. I think it would be the fullest statement of it. Does that help at all? Or does it just mess it up?
That's, I guess. So.
Yes, all right. Well, if you can clarify it more for me, I'll put it up again and we'll come back. Who else wants something for an extra credit paper or something, or just to impress your teacher? Do any of you think I made a logical mistake tonight? Do we have anyone out there from Mr. Stolte's class? Okay, two Stoltes. Has he told you about affirming the consequence, why this is so terrible?
Yeah.
Did I affirm the consequence tonight? Because think about it. I said, okay, we have grace and nature, and normally it goes nature to grace, right? But then what I did tonight is I started with the consequent, grace, and I went back to nature. So did I mess up, is the question. All right. Here, so I'll give you something to spring on Mr. Stolte then. So you guys can be ready, okay? He gives you all this logical stuff, and it's really important. He tells you it is a mistake to say if P, then Q, Q, then P. Or to put that in normal words, if I'm in, here's how it would go. If I'm in Tucumcari, I'm in New Mexico. It would be a mistake to say, I'm in New Mexico, therefore I'm in Tucumcari. According to Mr. Stolte, and he's right. But that is not the full story. Because if I say to you, I'm in New Mexico, sure, it doesn't logically prove that I'm in Tucumcari. But doesn't it kind of like suggest it? Like if I say to you, hey, let's play a guessing game. I'm somewhere in New Mexico. Tucumcari should pop right in your head because it's like the only place where there are hotels in the entire state. You get what I'm saying? There's like 1 billion hotel rooms there. So what I've done tonight, I've not demonstrated anything. I have not said, because this is what the church says, this is what is naturally the case and I have proven it. But I have said, this suggests something here. Just like, so you can say to them, you've given us too narrow of a logical approach to this, right? That it really should be if P then Q, Q, maybe P. That's what I've done tonight. So now you have it to get Mr. Stolte and work him up. All right. Any other questions, concerns?
I'm so ready for this.
I mean, this is going to be epic if I wrap this up at the 45-minute mark. And I'll probably get in trouble for this, but I'm willing to. Anything else? Question there?
Sort of, kind of, maybe a clarification, sort
Okay.
of. I probably should have asked the way you said questions the first time.
No, no.
Alright, like about miracles
Right.
and how miracles are normal. But like, I mean, it's sort of weird though, because like, if we're trying to normalize miracles, then it take away from the miracle.
Miraculous. Yeah.
Thank you, of it. I mean, does it
Yeah.
automatically become not a miracle? And sort of, oh, this is sort of half other point. And how you're like pointing to like super duper athletes, you know,
Right.
like sort of, but those things could be quantified potentially, you know? You can measure like how much force coming out Jordan's legs, and you could, and those automatically don't become miracles in the miraculous sense. It has become like scientifically quantifiable thing.
Yeah.
I mean, so are you saying that miracles are just like anomalies that have some special divine force behind them? Or are you saying miracles don't exist because everything is a miracle? Or like, I'm like sort of...
No, those are a bunch of super sharp points. So let me try to handle them a few one at a time. So first of all, you identified a problem I didn't want to bring up because I didn't want to like, I was just trying to kind of, BS you a little bit. But yeah, you normally define miracle as this: a violation of nature, a violation of what naturally happens. That's a pretty common definition of miracle. So it should rub you the wrong way when I say there are natural miracles, right? So point number one, you're right. I was messing around. If you pushed on me though, and I have to answer now. Okay, here's how I answer. I'm saying that there are levels of the miraculous. No, I don't think everything is a miracle. I don't think while I tap this podium, miracle, miracle, miracle. But I do think, again, grace builds on nature. I think even though those things are quantifiable, right, these athletes, that there's still something abnormal about them, so it's kind of a miracle, right? Like there's an explanation for Abraham Lincoln. He read the Bible 12 times by candlelight, and he worked hard, so we can explain him, but it's still very abnormal. And I think natural miracles, like you suggested, are probably more on the level of abnormalities. They don't play by the normal rules. But so then, that's what grace takes advantage of. Grace takes advantage of the fact that nature's rules are not ironclad things that it always has to happen this way no matter what. Nature's a little flexible. So then grace comes along and says, okay, if nature is flexible, let me show you the ultimate flexibility. Let me walk on water. Let me cure a leper, right? Let me do all these things. So again, I think grace takes a flexibility that is already there and then elevates it to something we could never achieve by nature. Like you're right, there is something far more miraculous about walking on water than about having a really awesome dunk in basketball. But there's still kind of a continuity that they are both not what normally happens. Does that meet your objection a little bit? I mean, I think you fundamentally kind of refuted me on that point. I'd give it to you, but see what I'm saying? That like, it would be unrealistic to say there are no miracles, we can't explain everything, because we can't. And I don't know if it's so much that we lack knowledge, right? I think sometimes reality just contains surprises. I think surprise is built into reality.
So, could you say then that everything is a miracle?
I don't-
Essentially, if God allows us to move in things, you can say like everything's a miracle because it's infused by grace or something like that, or therefore.
I
maybe-
think we'd be losing, as a philosopher, my fundamental thing is I don't allow us to depart from what we would normally say in our common speech and our common sense. And if we start calling everything a miracle, then the word miracle has no meaning. So I wouldn't go that far. Because we normally move, and we normally do all these things. What we don't normally do, at least I don't, is dunk a basketball like epically and hang up in the air. like that. Or play tennis like Federer, and stuff like that. Or, have a two-headed snake. All that stuff is weird. Other thoughts? Yes?
So you're gonna say Jordan's a miracle, then are you discount like athletes in their training? Saying that like, because being Butler being born is a miracle, like it doesn't happen every day. Nice training. That's anybody can do that.
Very good. See, when I tried out this stuff about Federer and Jordan, Taylor Fail, the guy who made this, who's a philosophy teacher from way back, he's like, no, those guys are virtuous for what you just said, because there is an explanation. They've trained. Like, Federer has hit more balls than anyone else, and so he's so awesome. And Jordan, they played a lot of basketball, right? So, I'll grant that, but I'd want to say something like, I don't know, like Kobe Bryant, he's like virtuous. Jordan is divine. You know what I mean? That like, they both have training. I don't deny that. But Jordan is, even with training, he's better than he should be. He's just like this basketball miracle. That's what I'm saying. I'm standing by it. But you're right that I'm vulnerable on that point too. I mean, this is great. This is what I wanted to happen tonight. I told everyone, and you can ask them, that I said, my goal tonight is to be completely and utterly refuted, to be denounced, right? Because why? At least you're not asleep. That's the worst as a teacher. You look down and you're just done. So excellent. Yeah, you're well trained in Aristotelianism. Other thoughts, questions? Joe?
I'd just like to clarify something about your So you said
I was because bad in class and this happens. All right, go ahead.
You said of those 3 examples that you gave that heaven was like the weirdest idea.
Oh yeah.
And then you said donuts were weirder than miracles.
Middle, second weirdness level.
Why did you decide to say donuts were weirder than miracles?
I mean, because at least if we're following this athlete point, like, when you see a miracle like Jordan, it's a miracle, but you kind of feel good about it. You're like, yeah. But Donut Sunday, you break out in goosebumps. Right? Like, and your wife is like, we gotta go. We're not running out the minute he says mass is ended, go in peace this time. We're going down there. And you just don't want to. And then, so, I mean, again, that's not a scientific thing. I think you can reorder my weirdness level without losing my main point. But I think we encounter... Yeah, I think Donut Sunday is bizarre, especially because of that contrast I made of what goes along with it. Like, after like what we just experienced, like the Catholic theology is that the Mass is the crucifixion and resurrection. Not like it, not a reenactment of it, it isn't. You are there somehow. It's a participation in the same thing. All right? And then you go eat donuts. Shouldn't you go like, after that, just like, go like fall on your knees and stare at the sky for an hour? Like, or that in the Eucharist, you receive God himself. Like other people have said, look, even Catholics don't believe in the Eucharist because if they really believe that, they won't even be able to go up there and receive the Eucharist. Like they'd be too scared, right? But we do it somehow. And then we go eat donuts. I mean, don't you think that's weirder than talking about a miracle? Disconnect. I mean, but it's great. It's great. Yeah, I'm telling you to go do it. But I mean, Dr. Hartman.
Isn't the weird part that it's both of them are aspects of the mystical body of Christ? Isn't that the weird part?
Maybe that's the
you're eating the
source of the
donuts and
weirdness.
you're refusing to join the Knights. Is in some sense your participation in the mystical body of Christ. I won't say just as much as you receiving communion, but he's present there too. And you're uniting it. This is why your wife rightly makes you go. You can participate in the full body of Christ, I think.
Yeah.
Isn't it miraculous that the donuts are part of the body of Christ? And that he's working salvation through you through donuts?
I mean, it would be a little easier for me if Jesus was giving me the donuts.
How do you know?
Oh, don't tell him, no. I mean, again, but it's like I contradict myself because I build up the weirdness, and then I immediately try to give you a bunch of Aristotle to say, but it's not weird. It's something you should do. So I mean, I want it recorded that for the record. I said go to Donut Sunday.
I was trying to save you that the donut thing was more miraculous, because Christ could be present there, and that, if you don't want to be saved, get back off on that.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I meant. Yeah. I was testing you to see if I could Socratically bring it out of you. See, these guys, it's like shark smelling blood, right? Like they got me a couple classes and completely refuted me, and now they're out to get me. You know, my first class, they sit there, they're respectful, and they love me, and they're like my disciples. The second class, they walk in and they kind of look at me the way you look at someone before you win the soccer game 10-0. I mean, so it's, don't look at me. Other questions, thoughts, concerns, denunciations? Well, guys, one more, yeah, come back.
Okay, well, I was thinking like the way you sort of went about this, you put forth quandaries about grace and then sort of explained them through things that we know normally. And that it sort of seems backwards to me, considering that religion is supposed to explain what, like our lives, like it's supposed to put it into context, you know, and you sort of, you did it backwards, like. So I'm wondering, like, does that mean that you think the natural, like, normal things take precedence over, like, religious things, or why did you, like, do it that way?
Let me show you by messing with you a little bit, okay? I'm God. Worship me. Why are you not on your knees right now worshiping me? Didn't I just tell you I was God? Why? Honestly, tell me why.
Because I don't believe you.
Why don't you believe me?
I don't have a reason to believe you.
You have no reason to do it. So you're right to give precedence to religion and grace. I'm not suggesting that grace and nature are totally equal and on par. I would put grace up here. But notice, it's like a ladder. To get up there, you got to climb the ladder. So what reason or nature does is they open up a possibility for us. And then, and only then, if it seems rationally credible, then you can accept the answers that grace gives. So apparently, you seem really well informed about Catholic theology, so I'm going to assume you're Catholic. If you're not, don't rebut me because it'll destroy my point. But it seems that you have found that something like the Catholic faith could be rationally credible. There could be a God. He could take on a human nature to come teach us things and save us. And because your reason has told you there's nothing, strictly speaking, impossible about that, then you can accept the Bible and Revelation. But if I come to you and I try to stand up here with my tie askew, and after having been contradicted by all kinds of people, and I tell you I'm God, your reason's like, nope, not possible. So that's the connection I'm suggesting, is that nature opens up the space for grace. But once it has done that, then I'm also suggesting that you don't always have to go that one direction, nature to grace, philosophy up to theology. Rather, theology can give you clues about reality. Like in theology class or at church, you don't just learn about what's true up in heaven, what's true about God, because it must have a natural basis. So it should be possible to take that religious stuff and kind of look back to nature and figure out stuff about reality, using those as hints. I don't mean to suggest, though, that like, okay, this pie in the sky says one thing, but we'll allow it because the reason says this. Rather, just that this stuff seems weird to people because they don't have that foundation. They have these sort of Catholic truths floating up here. God is a Trinity. The Eucharist is God. There are miracles, whatever. But they haven't reflected on the natural foundation for it. So, of course, that stuff's going to seem weird if it seems to be just floating up in the sky in that way. But once you combine nature and grace, then I think a little bit of the weirdness vanishes. It seems reasonable. Did I triumphantly?
Well, yeah, I'm sort of thinking of Augustine talking about like believing before you, believing so that you may understand, except he does a lot of like, he says, of course God is good, and then this is how it works out. You know, like he accepts things on face value of grace, and then works out like the the reasoning behind it. You know, it's weird.
Yeah, I definitely, I know what you mean about the believe in order to understand, which at first would seem to make him one of those kind of religion-only people.
Yeah.
Yeah, here's, and I'm not an Augustine expert, here's my one caution about that though. St. Thomas Aquinas, who is the Catholic philosopher and really theologian, you know they took his book and they put it on the altar next to the Bible, the Council of Trent, St. Thomas? He read Augustine differently than you. He read Augustine as saying grace builds on nature, right? That we believe in order to understand means that religion can help us understand, but it doesn't mean that, you know, we can only have belief, not understanding, right? So he saw, actually St. Thomas saw Augustine being a little bit more in line with what I'm saying. And even in your example that God is good, yes, religion says that, but that's something we can prove philosophically too. Like, we can't get too far. We can maybe get up that there is a God, but I think we can also get to there's one God and that God is good. And that's where philosophy has to quit. We can't go further. But I think we can get that high, at least. And then from there, theology would have to take over. I said a lot there. Any other thoughts, concerns? Thanks for coming out tonight, guys. This is a lot of fun.